Mauricio. I am 42 years old, and back in March, I was diagnosed with leukemia. We had just gotten back from vacation in Australia. We were gone for 2 weeks chasing Springsteen around, and in Brisbane, the last night of the Springsteen concert that we went to, I had gotten bit by what I thought was a mosquito. I woke up, my hand was itchy, the itch went away, and then all of a sudden it blew up, turned purple, swelled up, and it was like a blister. So I lanced it, put some ice on it, it started drying up. By the time I got home, I was feeling better. I was a little jet lagged from such a long vacation, and then I started getting a pain under my right arm, and I thought, breast cancer. That was my first thought. So I went to the doctor about a week and a half after we got back. They ordered a mammogram, ultrasound, and some blood work. Mammogram was negative, so that was good, but they did find 2 swollen lymph nodes under my arm, and we didn't know the cause of it yet. I had blood work done. The next week I followed up with the doctor, and it was a Wednesday afternoon. I had been diagnosed with frozen shoulder that morning, so I couldn't even raise my arm up. Went to the doctor, and he said, all of your counts are really low. Your white counts, white blood cell counts, your red blood cell counts, your everything was just extremely low. We want you to see a hematologist, and the quickest way to do that is for you to go to the emergency room at Hopkins, have them check yourself in, and have them admit you. So I grabbed an overnight bag, thinking, all right, we'll get through whatever this is, flu, virus, whatever, and I didn't go home for 42 nights. Sorry, I'm getting emotional now. The following day, that was on a Wednesday, on Thursday I was diagnosed with leukemia. They weren't sure which kind. At first they thought it was AML, then they thought it was ALL. It ended up being a rare form called ABL, which is acute bilineage. It has factors of both ALL and AML in it. Only about 2% of diagnoses are ABL. And my first thought when we got to the hospital was, we got to call Chuck Pagano, the coach from the Indianapolis Colts, who used to coach in Baltimore. And we were actually supposed to see him that weekend. We were supposed to go to the owners' meetings, NFL owners' meetings in Florida, and that didn't happen. So we called him before I even called my family. My family is all up in New Hampshire and in Florida. And, he was our first call, and he was very gracious, spent half hour, 45 minutes talking to us about what to expect. It wasn't until the following week that I actually got my diagnosis as to what kind of leukemia it was. But when I was diagnosed, I wasn't emotional about it. It was weird. I think I'm more emotional now that I've gone through everything. And I said to my husband that night, we were talking about, are we going to go public with this? Because he does sports radio in Baltimore, and people are going to find out. We don't want people hearing it through the grapevine. And I said, tell whoever you want. I'm going to live through this. I'm not going to die. And that was 7 months ago. It's funny, I'm also diabetic, type 1 diabetic. I've been diabetic since I was 19, but I never knew my blood type until after I started chemo. I needed my first blood transfusion, and I turned around and looked at the bag of the blood, and it was B positive. I'm like, B positive? That's pretty cool. I'm like, who thinks of their blood type as being pretty cool? But it soon became a mantra and a way of thinking, and I never had any down days. I always stayed positive, and I think going public with our battle was one of the things that helped us the most. Was I didn't sit dwelling in self-pity, and I just always had people there giving me well wishes, sending me cards and emails and Facebook messages, and I made sure to respond at least with a like to every response that we got on our posts, and I really think that support helped. When in the hospital as well, I don't know if any of you know Maria Dennis from 106.5, but I met her in the hospital. So, I don't suggest it, but it's one hell of a way to make new friends. I made a couple good friends. They want you to walk a lot at the hospital, and I ended up being in competition with somebody. I don't know who it was, because we used to mark off each lap around the nurse's desk, and I would see how many laps this person did in that room, and then I'd go and try and beat her. And it turns out we've ended up becoming very good friends through this whole thing. A lot of cancer treatments haven't changed. Chemo is still the same chemo that came out back in the 70s and 80s, but my treatment was pretty aggressive. They weren't sure that they were going to get it into remission with the first round of chemo, but luckily they did. Then the challenge was I needed a bone marrow transplant, which they knew pretty immediately that I was going to need the bone marrow transplant, so they were looking for a donor right away. My sister wasn't a match. I think only 40% of related donors are a match. 20%. 4 in 10 people will find a match at the bone marrow registry. So my donor was found in Germany. He was a 21-year-old man. And I actually received a letter from him about a little over 30 days after my transplant, which was incredible because a lot of people never get to hear anything about their donors, let alone a letter explaining why he did this. And he said that he didn't think he was a hero, but he is absolutely a hero. Anytime you put yourself out there and help somebody else, I think, and give something of yourself, I mean, something as intimate as blood and bone marrow, you're a hero. And what you guys are doing to help LLS not just raise awareness, but to help with funding for critical programs to try and find a cure. Right now, they've told me they will never say I'm cured. There's always a chance it'll come back. I'm hoping it doesn't. I'm 140, 150 days out from my bone marrow transplant, and I feel great other than coming down with a cold recently. But I've been doing extremely well. My doctors have said my blood work has come back better than what they expected, and better than average. So, I'm doing all right, and I'd like to thank you all for doing this. Hopefully next year I'll be able to run with you guys. I hope. I had actually originally said I had wanted to run it, but with the bone marrow transplant, they give you growth factor shots to try and increase the number of donor cells, and the nurse, I was going through some extreme pain, and the nurse said it's like trying to fit 8 pounds of crap in a 5-pound bag. So those cells are just trying to get out. So I've been still dealing with some pain in my hips and stuff like that, but I hope to do the I hope to do the half marathon next year, so we'll see, but I'll like to do this as well and stop getting emotional. I didn't cry through the whole thing. The only time I cried during the whole thing was when I would get a nice letter in the mail or see an email from somebody. It was really touching. I think I'm an engineer with Verizon, and I think I'm just very matter of fact, like, how do we get beyond this? And that helped. But support from you guys, and not just for me, but for the other patients, people who've made it, people who haven't made it. I get emotional when I see little kids. Like, I would rather go through everything I went through all over again so a kid wouldn't have to go through it. It breaks my heart to see what they have to go through, knowing personally what I've had to go through. So thank you again, and good luck to you all tomorrow, and I know you'll do great, and thank you for helping raise funds needed for the research.